Hey, seventh graders. Happy Wednesday. Happy Spirit Week. Today's Crazy Sock Day. For you, I'm recording this video on Crazy Hair Day. So if you feel like celebrating Crazy Hair Day again, please feel free to do that with me today. We are ready for math. Make sure you're in a space that's good to go and you have your notes ready. Today, we're going to start off by talking more about the distributive property. So yesterday we talked about lots of different properties, the associative property, we talked about the distributive property, we talked about combining like terms in order to simplify expressions. Today we're going to dive way deeper into just the distributive property because not only as seventh graders do we need to be able to distribute a factor from outside parentheses into terms inside the parentheses, but actually we also need to go backwards and we need to do what is called factoring. Really excited to dive in. All right, so let's talk about the distributive property. I'm going to go ahead and read this and just so you know, this is also posted in Google Classroom if you want to come back to it later. So expanding or distributing means to multiply, that's our key word, multiply the factor outside the parentheses to each term inside the parentheses. So here's an example. You may have an expression like 8 parentheses x plus 3. Those orange arrows we usually draw in to show multiplication. So 8 times each term inside the parentheses. So 8 times x is 8x, and 8 times 3 is 24. So the distributive property tells me that 8 times the quantity x plus 3 is equal to 8x plus 24. Those are equivalent expressions. Okay. There's a couple other examples here. One where the factor outside the parentheses has a variable in it. That still works. I can multiply that factor 2x to each term inside the parentheses. 2x times 5x is 10x squared. And 2x times 7 is 14x, and I can keep that subtraction sign. I could also change it to add the opposite, make it plus and negative here and here. Okay, so that's distributive property. This is something we're really good at as a team as a whole. The other part that I want to review is factoring. Factoring still uses the distributive property, but it uses it backwards. So to factor, instead of multiply, to factor means to divide out a common factor. Divide a common factor out of each term in an expression and write it as a factor outside of the parentheses. So for example, this expression, 12x plus 6, I'm thinking of what are common factors of 12 and 6. Remember, a factor is a number that multiplies together to get a number. So 12 has factors of 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. 6 has factors of 1 and 6, 2 and 3. The greatest common factor is 6. 6 is a factor of both, and that's the greatest of the common factors. So I can factor out a 6. So I write that factor outside the parentheses. And then I just have to figure out what am I left with inside the parentheses. So if I divide out 6, I start with 12x, I divide it by 6. 12x divided by 6 is 2x. And I start with 6 and I divide by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. Okay. So factoring is just like the distributive property to distribute or to expand. It's just going backwards. It's starting with an expression with no parentheses, no grouping symbols, and it ends with a factor outside parentheses. So what we need to do as seventh graders is use the distributive property forwards and backwards to write equivalent expressions. So that's what we're going to practice today. Let's go ahead and get our notes set up. Make sure you have paper and a pencil. And go ahead and write along with me. Today is April 8th. Math notes. We are doing two things today. We are distributing and we are factoring. Factoring, you can think of like find the factors of the terms in an expression. Both of these processes use the distributive property of multiplication, which you've been using in different ways since elementary school. I'm really excited to use it this way today. All right, we're going to go ahead and do question 1. We're going to do this one together. All right, here we go. Question 1 says factor the expression 9x minus 36. Go ahead and write down 9x minus 36. Okay. So I'm also just going to jot myself a note that this is an example about factoring. It asked me to factor this expression. Okay. So the first thing that I noticed, I've got to be really careful with signed numbers when I'm factoring and when I'm distributing. I've got to use those rules for multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. So if I accidentally lose a sign, then I've suddenly got the wrong answer. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that any subtraction I change to addition by adding the opposite. So this becomes 9x plus negative 36. Keep, change. All right. Then the second thing I'm going to do once I've changed any subtraction to addition, I'm going to list out the common factors of the coefficient and of the constant. Right now, I'm just going to imagine that this is a positive 36. I don't need to worry that it's negative yet. So I'm going to go ahead and list out factors of 9. And in a second, I'll do the same thing for 36. So factors of 9, you can use like the rainbow method. A lot of you are really good at that from elementary school. I know that 1 times 9 is 9. There's the beginning of my rainbow. Does 2 go into 9 evenly? No. Does 3? Yep. 3 times 3. Okay, so that's it. Once I get to the numbers meet in the middle, that's it. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, so factors of 9 are 1, 3, and 9. So now I'm looking for 36. I'm looking for common factors. So I wonder if these factors, or some of them, are also factors of 36. When I factor, I can factor out anything. In high school, you will always factor out the greatest common factor. So that's what I want you to practice now, so you're really ready. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and list out factors of 36 so that I can find the greatest common factor, the GCF. All right, 36 is a bigger number, so there's going to be more factors. I'm actually going to use a little bit more space here. Factors of 36. Well, I know 1 and 36 multiply together to get 36. Does 2 go in evenly? 2 times what is 36? 2 times 18 is 36. Okay, does 3 go in evenly? The divisibility rule for 3 is add the digits together, and if that sum is divisible by 3, then the original number is. So 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 is divisible by 3. So I know 36 is divisible by 3. The question is, how many times does 3 go into 36? 3 times what is 36? 3 times 12 is 36. 3 times 12 is 36. So I know both 3 and 12 are factors of 36. Does 4 go in evenly? It sure does. 4 times what is 36? 4 times 9 is 36. All right, does 5 go in? No, that doesn't end in a 5 or a 0, so no. Does 6 go in? Yes, 6 times 6 is 36. And I know that was the end because I got those middle numbers. Okay, do you see any common factors between 9 and 36? I see a few. Find the greatest common factor. The greatest common factor is 9. If you want some more practice with this is a review that we won't do anymore together. If you want more practice with this, it's really easy to find the greatest common factor practice and videos on Khan Academy. You can just search greatest common factor and you'll find a lot of examples to help you out. If you don't need help, we're going to move on, okay? Let's go ahead and get to work factoring this expression. So when I factor it, remember I divide out a common factor. I know that the greatest common factor is 9, so that's the one I'm going to divide out. So it goes outside of my parentheses. I could factor out 3, I could factor out 1, but again, when we get to high school, we're going to be factoring out the greatest common factor in order to solve problems. So it's really good to practice with that now. Okay, so now I've got to figure out what numbers go in here. So I take my original first term, 9x, and I divide 9. What is 9x divided by 9? Well, I know 9 divided by 9 is 1, so 9x divided by 9 is 1x. If you said just x here, that also works, okay? Same thing, I'm going to divide out the common factor from 36. So 36 divided by 9 is, I've already done this work, right? 4. Don't get tricked. This is a negative 36. So what number needs to go here in order to make 9 times that number, negative 36? Negative 4. Did you get it? If you got it, put a big star. Really nice job using those rules from last week and earlier this year into this question. Nice job. You could type in this question the way it is. So I could circle that and be done. I actually like to clean it up a little bit and make it simpler. I do that by just dropping the coefficient of 1. So I might give my answer x plus negative 4. Like that. You can type in that answer. You're totally correct. Or you could also switch it back to subtraction to just cut down on the number of symbols you're using. Totally up to you. One way is not better than the other. You also might write x minus 4, 9 parentheses x minus 4. That's it. So we factored this expression by writing common factors, by dividing out or factoring out that common factor we found, and then we just cleaned up our expressions. Let's go ahead and write in. Factor this expression 9 parentheses, parentheses, x minus 4. That's it, team. Okay, you'll see a question like this in your independent practice, so make sure you have your notes totally ready. If you need a second, go ahead and pause the video. And we are going to move on to question 2. All right, question 2 says, select all expressions equivalent to negative 72x plus 60. I see 3 expressions. All of them have a factor outside the parentheses, and this one does not. So I think that what happened between the question and the possible correct answer choices is that a factor was factored out of the expression. Okay. So here's what I'm thinking. I could approach this in 2 ways. One is I could factor this expression. I could factor negative 12 out. And I could factor 6 out and see what I get, see if I get something equivalent to A, B, or C. Or I could distribute each answer choice to try and see if it matches the question. I'm going to say that one more time. I could distribute each answer choice to see if it matches the original expression. I prefer to distribute the answer choices. I think it's a little bit easier to do that than it is to factor, but it's your preference. So I'm going to go ahead and model and do with you. Expanding each answer choice. So do me a favor, go ahead and write down this original expression on your paper next to number 2. Negative 72x plus 60. Okay. And then I'm also going to just write A on my paper. So A says negative 12 parentheses 6x minus 5. Okay, so go ahead and make your paper look like mine. I like to put a big star, or you can use another symbol if you want, to show what the original expression was, because I'm going to end up doing a lot of work, and then I've got to compare it back, right? And I'm going to keep doing that for A and B and C. Okay. All right, so let's expand this. I'm going to go ahead, I noticed that there's subtractions. I'm going to go ahead and keep change. Keep 6x, change subtraction to addition, change 5 to negative 5. Now I'm going to distribute this negative 12 using multiplication and see if it matches my original. Okay, so I'm going to do negative 12 times 6x and negative 12 times negative 5. Here we go. Man, 6 times 12 is always a fact I have to triple check in my head. I always mix that one up. Does that happen to you? Probably not. You guys are really smart. Okay. I got negative 72x plus 60. Note, I had to remember my rules here. I know a negative times a positive is a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. All right, does this match my original expression? Wow, it looks exactly like it. I'm going to go ahead and check that off. I know I'm going to be circling, or actually checking A. Okay. Go ahead and expand B and C, and we'll come back. Let me set a quick timer for, let's do a minute and a half. Okay. Go ahead and expand B and C, and then meet me back here to review. We're halfway through our time. You should be moving on to C. If that's too fast for you, that's okay. You can pause the video before we come back together. All right, there's our time. If you need a second, please take it, pause the video, and keep working. Here is my thinking for B. For B, the very first thing I did, I noticed there was subtraction here. Did you catch that? So I changed it to plus a negative, plus the opposite. Okay, that helps me because this question is not just about distributive property. It's also about, did you remember that a negative times a negative is a positive? If you don't remember that rule, or if you don't notice that that 5 must be negative, then you can't get the right answer. Okay, so a lot of things that are being assessed here, putting it all together. I put this as just not true, there was the wrong sign. That's just because a negative times a negative is a positive. Here's C. I did think C was true. When I multiplied 6 times each term inside the parentheses, I got the same thing as my original expression. Okay, so A and C are correct. Make sure you have work that looks like this, so you have a good example when you do your independent practice. They'll do a lot of questions very similar to this one, so it's a great practice. All right, team, here's question 3. Question 3, select the options that are equivalent to 4 times the quantity of 3x plus 3. Lots of answer choices to pick from here. I see in my question stem, I have an expression that is not expanded. And I see here, I see some that are, I see some really funky ones. They're not all kind of the same. So what I'm going to do is actually first start by expanding this and then potentially expand each answer choice. And then I'll be able to see if they're the same or not. Okay. So go ahead and do that. I'll meet you back here. Let's see, I'll meet you back here in 2 minutes. Go ahead and get started. All right. I just got done with E, so if you need a little bit of extra time, it's totally fine. Take that extra time and just click pause to do that. If you are ready, go ahead and check your answers with me. I got A, B, and D only. A, B, and D only. Here's what my work looks like. Here was the original expression. I expanded it. I used the distributive property to expand it. I put a star here because if it matched either of these, it would be a true answer choice. Okay. Here is my thinking for, let's see, I can only get a couple on the screen at a time, A and B. C has kind of a funny setup. This 4 parentheses 3x close parentheses and then plus 3, that just means that the 4 is being multiplied to the 3x. It's not being multiplied to the 3x and the 3, like in the original. So C is not true because I end up with 12x plus 3. I did not get to multiply this by 4 the way it was written, so that's a wrong constant term. D is true. I just combined the like terms in order to see that it was equivalent to the original. E is way off. E is if you messed up what operation was happening in the original. This X is actually a multiplication sign. They wrote it as an X and not a dot, which is a little bit tricky. Yeah, definitely not true. Okay, let's look at the next one. Number 4 is our last question. Here we go. Let's make it count. All right, here we go. Question 4 says, write an equivalent expression for 4x plus 12. Okay, I'm going to change the directions just slightly. There are a lot of ways you could write an equivalent expression, but I want you to factor the greatest common factor. So please write down this expression on your paper. This is number 4, 4x plus 12. 4x plus 12. All right, and this is, I'm going to factor here. Just writing that for myself, and you should too, because it's a really good way to, like if you have to factor on your independent practice, you will. You should come back and look at a question like this, and that's an easy way to find it. Okay, let's go ahead and think about factors of 4. I'm skipping my keep, change because there's no subtraction. Right? Factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2. Okay. Factors of 12, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4, and I've met in the middle there. So then I'm looking for the greatest common factor. It is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and factor out a 4. Remember, to factor out means to divide out. So I'm doing my first term divided by 4, and I write that number here. My second term divided by 4, and I write that number here. Okay, it's like opposite of distributing. 4x divided by 4 is 1x, or x. I keep my plus sign. 12 divided by 4 is 3. That's it, team. I can always recheck my work by redistributing, right? 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 3 is 12. Yep, it's the same thing. It's a really helpful thing to check, especially with negatives, okay? So my answer is here, 4 parentheses x plus 3. All right, I need you to do a couple of things now that you're done with this lesson video. 1, leave a lesson summary in the comments. Please leave a lesson summary that is like a conjecture. So write one like mathematical fact or piece of learning that was covered in this video. I'm noticing some scholars writing like the topic, like in this lesson, we talked about factoring, which is true, but doesn't help you consolidate your learning at all. So please write a lesson summary that is a mathematical conjecture, something like the distributive property allows us to factor, factoring means you blank, right? And explain that. Second thing, go ahead and complete the independent practice linked to this assignment in Illuminate. Third thing, please complete the skill builder. All you need to do is get 3 correct in a row. So if you get all 3 right the first time, it's only 3 questions, and they should be really quick. If you, let's say you get the first one right and you miss the second one, then you still need to get 3 correct in a row after that, okay? And when you're done with those 3 things, go ahead and click mark as done on this assignment so that we know it is ready to be reviewed. Excellent work so far this week. I will see you back here tomorrow. Stay safe. Go wash your hands.